gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 450. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and not as always, I'm joined by our producer, Guy.
You did it right this time.
Woo! I modified my behavior just in time. As far as housekeeping, Saturn is still not here because he wasn't here 2 hours ago when we recorded the last episode because we record in blocks.
So when you ask 2 hours from now, he's still not here.
Yeah, he's still not be here. He'll be here on episode 451. Also, this is episode 450. It's, it's notable, I think. It's a notable
Yeah, we don't celebrate
episode.
the 50s, apparently.
No, I think the first time we did 50, we did. But then after that, it's just the hundreds.
Right, because, 50 happens every year, right?
Right. Well, it's the same. It's like how comic books do it, right? Up to 100, you celebrate 25, 50, 75. But after 100, nobody cares about Spider-Man issue 150, but issue 200 is a thing,
That's fair. So now they're sending me 2 Spider-Mans a month. They're getting greedy.
It's Spider-Man. Is the plural.
No. It's 2 individual Spider-Mans.
It's better than Batman. There's like 12 Batman comics every month. If you want to read all of Batman, it's like Batman and his shitty friends, and there's like 50 of them. So,
no, I tried that at one point. Like, I just tried getting like the TBBs at the end of the year or whatever, right? And no, there's too many. There's like Batman, there's Detective Comics. I thought those were the same thing. No.
Well, so when I was reading it, I was totally off on a tangent. Second episode of the night, in case no one can tell, Batman was like about Batman fighting Batman criminals, but Detective Comics was him being more detective-y and solving crimes and shit. That was my assessment at the time.
I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, so Saturn's still not here. He'll be back for episode 451, and he'll be better than ever. I'm making that claim now. And if he doesn't live up to it, then you all have had your expectations set and then shattered, and it's his fault.
Well, he'll certainly be better than now.
Yeah, he'll be better than he would be if he was here right now. Last night he got on and was like, okay, let's do the show. Oh.
My face hurts so bad.
I'm in pain.
I think I can make it through the show and sleep through the night.
Poor guy. My week. I picked up a few games to play on my new laptop. I picked up Deep Rock Galactic Survivor.
I read that as Surveyor, and I was like, is that...
Surveyor would be more on brand for Deep Rock Galactic. Deep Rock Galactic still is a 4-person online co-op PvE kind of looter shooter with crafty bits in it is what I'm going to say it is, and I think is pretty accurate.
I have no information to contradict that.
Basically, you play space dwarves going to space mines and shooting bugs and mining stuff and then going back to the ship, and it's just like a fun online co-op PvE game. And they released this game called Survivor, which is a Vampire Survivors clone.
Oh, okay.
And it's really good. Like it's really good.
You said that, yeah.
It is more structured than Vampire Survivors. It maintains the mining. So in addition to running around, killing enemies, picking up the XP from them, and upgrading your weapons and stuff, you are mining materials as you go. So there's this kind of like mental balancing act that you're doing of like, hey, I want to kill these bug monsters and get my XP, but also I need to mine things to get materials to upgrade myself, in between levels and after I get a game over or complete the level.
So it's a job.
And right, as much as Minecraft is a job. And adding that second layer really diversifies the gameplay, but also because the level is covered in mineable materials and it's like top-down, isometric view, you can kind of craft like tunnels and strategic areas into the level. So you're like, oh, there's too many enemies coming at me. Let me mine a tunnel and funnel them all down into it so they're easier to kill. So in addition to having this balancing act of like, I want to be mining, but I also want to be killing things and getting their experience, you're also changing the level as you play. And on top of that, each level they have a special goal. So it'll be like, hey, mine 20 of this mineral, or pick up 6 of these little mushrooms, little dungeon mushrooms off the ground or whatever. So you've got this quest going on, the mining going on, and the usual like Vampire Survivors kill all the dudes going on.
Fill this 8x10 hole that you've dug with blood.
I fucking wish that was a quest.
Here's your murder pool.
It's really good. It's very complex. It's very deep. It's very fun. The difficulty curve is... So Vampire Survivors, there's a moment in the game where you kind of tilt. In every game of VS, you hit a moment where you're like, all right, I've now accelerated my upgrades to a point that the enemies cannot keep up, and I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Or you don't reach that point, and they overwhelm you, and you die. Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is really good about keeping you right on that razor's edge where you're not quite tilted enough that you don't have to worry, but you never quite feel so far behind. Because sometimes in Vampire Survivors, you'll do a run where you're like, this ain't fucking happening. You know, like you're just kind of getting bad upgrades, or you made some bad choices and you're getting overwhelmed quickly, and you're like, yeah, you can struggle along for a minute or two, but you're like, I ain't making it to the end. I don't know if it's just how I've been playing it or how it's designed. I feel like it's a design thing, but they're really, really good about keeping you right on that razor's edge where you know, it's not easy, but it also doesn't feel overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. Like, I feel like a lot of times when I play Vampire Survivors, I'm trying to like do achievements still, like, and unlock characters, et cetera, et cetera. And so you get to a point where you're like, 10 minutes in, it's like, oh, I can just stand here and then,
walk away. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. And maybe that happens later. Maybe eventually you get upgraded to the point that it's a non-issue. But at least in the hours I've put into it so far, which is according to my Steam playtime, 6 hours, it's really good. There's 4 classes. They're all very different. It's got multiple levels. It really trickles out the unlocks kind of slow, which I like, because I think it's them identifying that, something that Vampire Survivors, I think, maybe identified a little bit too late, where sort of the point of the game is to unlock stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vampire Survivors has built it so that there's just so much fucking shit to unlock that there's always something to unlock. Survivor here, it is more the realm of, there doesn't seem to be a shitload of unlocks yet, but they trickle them out kind of slow. You're not getting them crazy fast. And they may add, it's still an early access game. So but it's like $9, and man, it's really good. If you've been looking for the next good Vampire Survivors, like this one, I think not only is a good one, but also adds enough different strategic elements that it really does feel like a different game. Because some of them I've played are just like, yeah, this is just Vampire Survivors, but you made it look like Diablo graphics. Or, yeah, this is Vampire Survivors, but it's pixely and you're in a graveyard. And you're like, it's fun. I like it. But it's not really like fundamentally different or improved on that formula, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Survivor definitely feels like they are bringing something new to the table. Like, just the mining part alone would be enough. If it was just the same game, but then look, here's mining on top of it, that would be enough. But they do add enough to really feel like I would say the first that I've played, the first real standout in this new genre that has been created by Vampire Survivors. Obviously not accounting for Vampire Survivors. But since VS, nothing has quite felt super standouty. This one really does. So super duper, absolutely pick this up if you liked VS at all. It's fun. It's real fun.
You can't tell me how to live my life.
I can recommend to you how to live your life. I also picked up the Etrian Odyssey like HD remaster bundle on Steam, because the collection came out for all 3 of them, and it was like $80. So I put it on my wish list, and it was on sale for like $40 for all 3 of them.
Is that the one where you take your horse on a journey?
What?
The Etrian Odyssey.
God damn it. No, it's not, Dad.
There's an Equine Odyssey.
It's Etrian. It's really good. It adds just enough. It's a very gentle remaster, right? It adds just enough to make them feel very playable. Because people that haven't played the very, very first Etrian game, it's missing kind of some of the features that later ones had. Like, I don't believe the original game had auto mapping at all, to my recollection, and they add pretty expansive auto mapping. Some of the later ones, and maybe also the first one, had auto mapping, but it would only map the floors, not the walls. So you can turn on like full auto mapping. You can increase combat speed. It makes it feel nice and snappy. And it's real good. I was a little concerned about the map controls because for people that haven't played Etrian, it's a first-person kind of anime aesthetic dungeon crawler, and that's the whole game. It's just you go to town, gear up, and then go into the dungeon. It's like however many levels of the dungeon. But you had to draw your own map on the touchscreen with the pin, so that was what made it cool.
Cool, and I was a little worried. Good word for it.
It was cool, all right, guy. Fuck off.
Oh, okay.
I was a little worried how that would translate to a controller interface, but I think they did it pretty intelligently, and it's a little fumbly for a couple of minutes, but then you kind of get in the swing of things. And I've only played a chunk of the first Etrian so far because I want to do them in order, but they're still really good. I would definitely be a little annoyed if I paid, I looked it up, $80 for the collection. But they seem to be going on sale for half off pretty regularly, and I think it's $40 worth of for the trio of games is fair.
Might have to check that out.
I also started playing Dragon Quest Builders 2.
I played that.
No reason really. It just has been in my Steam library. I got it on super sale for like $5 or whatever. During like the last winter sale or whatever. And I'd been playing a lot of FPS games from, I talked about last week. So it's very much like the terrors of war. And I was like, I need something to sort of cleanse my palate that's not just like literal war crimes playing out in front of me and people being like, "Hoorah, American military, save the world." I was like, I need to kind of, cleanse that palate. So I went to Dragon Quest Builders. I'm not far past the extremely long tutorial segment. It felt like hours. But it's cute. It's fun. I enjoy it. It says my playtime is 16 hours. There's no way it's that high. I think I must have left the game running or something. But it's
or you were just having so much fun you lost track of time, Justin.
If it really is 16 hours, that means the tutorial boat took me 16 hours, and I'm not willing to admit that I'm that bad at games yet. I think there's still some amount of hope for me. So I'm just going to say maybe I left it on overnight.
I guess.
What are you been playing, guy?
Well, I went to your house and played some Magic.
You go to my house. Yeah, we did play some Magic. We drafted some Wilds of Eldraine.
Yeah, we discovered that set. Andrew's just innately good at Magic.
Andrew, you hit the nail on the head. Andrew is a really good deck builder. Just inherently, it doesn't matter what game he's playing. And I think what it is he is hardcore into the DC deck builder game, which is, for people that haven't played deck builder games, as the name implies, you start out with a small static deck and you add cards to your deck as you play. And he's played an insane amount of that. And I think it's just taught him really good kind of card evaluation, because he is annoyingly good at building decks. I'll show up to his house, a card game he's never played, and be like, "Hey, let's build some decks and play." And he comes out of the gate with like a relatively competitive deck, and I'm over here like, "Oh, I can't actually play a third of my cards because I read they're the wrong type, and I fucking read them wrong, so they don't work." Like that's me, and so yeah, he is very good at putting together decks.
Yeah, I was impressed. Like we played 2 games, I guess, of our drafted decks, like 3-player games, and Andrew won both of them.
Oh yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Huh. It didn't even occur to me.
It was good. No, it was a really good time. I had a blast with y'all. It was really fun.
Yeah.
I've been playing Arena because the new set just came out beginning of the month, so that's a lot of fun. I enjoy learning a new set, and I'm again. It's kind of like last week we talked about Madden, where I'm in a journey to learn how to play limited arena or draft limited arena, right? Or Magic, excuse me. And like the people that I listen to, like podcasts or watch their content or whatnot, they're all like, yeah, I play Arena, sporadically, and I know how to do all of these things because I've been playing Magic for like 50 years.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, that's why you're good at this.
Yeah.
So, I'm on year 2, I think, and starting to feel like I'm kind of okay. Like as much as you're like, oh, there's an expert Magic player that's coming over or whatever. Like, I play and like get past gold. Like Gold League, you're getting like the way the rank system works. Like each league is in divisions, and each division has like little pips or whatever that you got to fill up.
Yeah.
And you get 2 pips if you win, and lose a pip if you lose through gold, right? So as long as you're winning at like a 50% clip or even like 45%, you're still going to get out of gold eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still I'm stuck in platinum because once I actually have to like maintain a winning percentage greater than 50, no, it doesn't happen. So I feel like maybe eventually I'll get out of platinum and then feel like I'm kind of good at the game.
I have always been bad at and disliked all limited formats in card games.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned what I really like, what I really get a kick out of is, and it's been true of every card game, is finding one deck I like and just getting really, really, really obscenely good at that one specific stack of cards. And that's
I get
it.
that, yeah.
Like that's and I learn all of the nuance. I learn all of the matchups with that one deck. I learn how to do weird edge cases and all the weird stuff that. So in like Flesh and Blood was the most competitive I think I ever got in a card game, and I played Rhinar was my main deck, and I doubt anybody knows Flesh and Blood listening, but if you do, you know that Rhinar is like a trash tier deck. He sucks. He's been trash tier since he came out. He's just bad, right? Mm-hmm. And I got, because he's a luck based deck, right? And so competitive players hate luck based stuff. They want things to be as consistent as possible. And I got so good at manipulating the variables in that deck that by the end of it, it was not a luck based deck anymore, because I got really good at, like, that's where the joy is for me, right? But just like slapping together a pile of cards I've just pulled, I'm like, I don't know. My assessment is that I'm dumb. And so it seems to take me a long time to learn and understand the interactions that these cards have. It seems to take me longer than most other people. Like other people I feel can look at some cards and be like, oh yeah, I can kind of see this little engine that they have going between one another. I'll look at the same cards and just see nothing. I'll be like, what are you talking about? And you'll have to sit down and explain it to me like I'm a little kid. And I'll be like, oh. And then I still won't get it until I've done it a dozen times. So that's just kind of where I am on it. But I mean, I still play limited. But, you know, I've always been so bad at it. Just fucking terrible.
And then other than that, I've gotten back into Destiny 2 a little bit.
Yeah, I fired that up. I spent last night playing with you and Andrew, and then this afternoon I was kind of like getting back up to, you know, not competitive because it's kind of a PvE game, but like playable.
Right, you're like 160 armor levels below me or whatever.
Yeah, I'm like fixing my gear up, trying to understand like where are we playing at, like what's the stuff to search for this season, like what's going on with it. And
yeah. No, I'm kind of excited to get. I deleted Forza 5 off my Xbox. Got rid of that 120 gigs, and then
so sad.
Downloaded 140 gigs of Destiny 2. So
there you go. Nice.
It's great.
I do enjoy Destiny. As having gone through a bunch of FPS games lately, it feels like the only major game that's really focusing on PvE first-person shooter content.
Yeah, and I like that. I like, it has a weird party size. And that's always been a problem for us. But now we're down to 3 friends that play. So great.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like. It like, I know that it's in demand because Destiny 2 does pretty good for itself. So like, why aren't more companies doing like really meaningful online PvE first person shooter content, please? I would like that if there was some competition in this space.
Right. It would be nice.
Which brings us to the news. First up, Breath of Fire 2 is now playable via the Capcom Town website, which is a weird website that you can go play games on if you want. But it's Breath of Fire 2, so you can also just play the Super Nintendo ROM. But it's on the website if you want it there as well.
I've never even heard of Capcom Town.
I think I went to it once and I was like, that's neat. I'll just play the ROMs. Like I wasn't gonna,
Yeah, I'm at it now and it's just loading. Oh, the website includes sound. We recommend turning it on for the full experience. Not right now, Capcom.
Is it still all like neon yellow?
Yeah.
Nice.
You say neon, I say piss,
The FTC has accused Microsoft of misrepresenting its plans during the Activision Blizzard King merger after recent layoffs.
What?
I can't believe a big mega corporation doing giant acquisitions would lie about their plans.
Not to the government.
This is impossible. Persona 3 Reload and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth have become the fastest selling games in the history of either franchise at 1 million units within 1 week.
Yikes. Wow. All right.
Which, first of all, let me say, that's great. Second of all, it's frustrating because the launch, monetization, and pricing of both of these games is what has prevented me from purchasing either.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like that. I feel that some market, monetization practices are being reinforced by the data.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I like both of these franchises, so I'm conflicted. Also, Sega announced lower than expected earnings due to slow sales, which we're starting to see every game company do. Because now that they've laid everybody off, they want to come out and be really sad about their low sales. And so I think we're just going to be seeing this for a couple years of game companies coming out and boo-hooing about their low sales. Celeste developer Maddie Makes Games has released a free 3D interpretation of the game called Celeste 64, which I haven't played yet, but looks really cool. And Celeste is a cool game, and you should play it because it's basically free on like a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It keeps coming in and out of Game Pass, which is annoying.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the original Celeste is just free. You can just go download it. I don't think... but in any case, it's a fun game. It's a good game. The original PC-8801 version of Ys has released on Switch internationally, but the game still plays only in Japanese. So if you don't speak Japanese, maybe don't play it because you won't know what they're saying. Although the first Ys game, you could probably get by. I think you probably get through it without knowing what any of the words are. It's a pretty light game.
I booted it up for all of 30 seconds. The original Ys.
The first one?
Yeah.
I like the first one. It's kind of arcadey.
Yeah, well, I
enjoy that.
Apparently have played like 3 hours of it,
That's
previously.
Basically the whole game. It's not very long.
Yeah. So I don't remember it at all, but I saw the news and was like, oh yeah, I meant to go through that. I've got like the Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles.
Yeah.
And so I booted up and then went, no, not right now.
Yeah. After a week of rumors, Microsoft held a Future of Xbox conference where they said that Xbox will continue to make consoles, though some games will be going multi-platform. Shocking nobody, I don't think. I don't think anyone's shocked by any of this. I think it's nice to hear them recommitting to the idea of dedicated hardware, because I think that's a thing a lot of us like. But I'm also not upset at more multi-platform now that I primarily game on PC. So, both good things to hear them doubling down on.
Yeah, I'll be interested. Like, it sounds like both Sony and Microsoft want to be more multi-platform going forward.
Yeah,
interested to see what the exclusive landscape looks like, and how that affects the hardware sales. Like, I haven't bought a PS5 at this point, and I don't know if I will or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I still have no intentions of purchasing one. I can just play all those Sony exclusives on a year delay, except for Demon's Souls, because they hate me. Fans have recreated the Satellaview F-Zero courses from a VHS recording using AI interpretation, which is the weirdest fucking sentence I've said in a long time.
I'm okay with this use of AI.
Me too. Like, it's cool. I didn't read enough about it to understand how they did it with AI, but neat. right?
Yeah, like I have problems with like AI art and really with AI voices, obviously. But this seems like a cool application.
Yeah. Yoshitaka Murayama, Suikoden series creator and scenario writer for Ayuden Chronicle, has passed away at age 55. Tragically, again, just like last week, extremely young.
Yeah.
So that's very tragic to hear. A lot of those communities are still in mourning, and it was, as far as I know, wasn't an expected thing. So that's very tragic to hear.
It's getting to the point. It's like, oh, when that guy was born, when I was born, that guy was barely a teenager.
It's getting there, right? You're reaching the age.
Oh no.
Sony says PS5 sales missed goals and will adopt more aggressive PC release plan, which is what I want to fucking hear because I don't have a PS5. So thanks, Sony.
Right? Yeah. Let's go down to like a 3-month delay. Like movies.
And finally, Tekken 8 seems like it's going to be adding an in-game cash shop after the game's release to skirt reviews dinging it for having a cash shop, which is something I think should be illegal. I think it should be legitimately illegal to take a game that someone just paid $70 for and add a cash shop to it. Period. Full stop. That's my thoughts on it. I'm very annoyed by this.
I can see why,
Like if you want to have a cash shop, sure, have your cash shop. But to add it, the game came out, 2 weeks ago? Like, you're obviously just trying to dodge reviews being upset about your monetization. Like, what other reason would you possibly have?
They're adding value, Justin.
You know what's really valuable? Buying a thing and then getting the whole thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Everquest. I thought that was just one of your bad transitions.
You know what else is really valuable? Everquest, which is our topic at hand this week. As for synopsis, do you have too much free time? Are modern MMOs too enjoyable? Come try Everquest.
I really like what I'm doing, and it's efficient.
As far as a note on scope, this is a very long note on scope, so please bear with me. This is kind of a weird episode because EverQuest is basically multiple games at this point, and I don't just mean EverQuest 2. All of the various fan servers for the game, which we talked about last episode, kind of exist at different points in the game's 25-year history. So, like, this fan server is Planes of Power era, and this fan server is Kunark era, and this fan server is a different era.
There's like this one EverQuest fan who's like tuning into this episode, and they're like, I didn't listen to the last one.
So, without going into too much detail on all the options, for the purposes of this episode and the research I have done, it is important to know about two versions of EverQuest.
Okay.
Retail EverQuest, sometimes also called Live.
Mm-hmm.
This is the version of the game that originally launched and is still going and still being run by the successor company that launched it. It has had 25 years of active development. It's on its 30th expansion and is so different from the game from the game that launched in 1999 that it is effectively a different game entirely. That is in the gameplay section of our episode, not the game we're talking about, but in the development section of the episode is the game we're talking about.
Okay, that makes sense.
Project 1999 is a fan-run, officially sanctioned server that tries to emulate the experience of playing EverQuest in 1999 after the first two expansions came out, but before any later content releases. And while not a perfect representation of the time, because again, it's a emulated fan server, they don't have the original server files, it's not perfect, it is the closest to a time capsule that we have in the EverQuest space to see what the game looked like in 1999. This is the version of the game that the gameplay section is about, because this is the one I played, but the development section is not about. It is about the actual original retail game that this game is emulating, but is not. Is everyone with me?
Sure.
Does this make sense?
I think your issue is wanting people to understand you.
It's worth noting that there are many other classic fan servers in similar and other eras of the game, with the notable recent one being Project Quarm, which is a little bit later than Project 99 and is post the graphical overhaul that the game received, so it looks very different. P99 is the version of the game that I played, version of the game I still play, and for this episode, it is the version of the gameplay we will be discussing. So this is why it gets weird, because if I go play Retail EverQuest, it's not the same as EverQuest that came out in 99, which is the game we're talking about in the development section, the actual original release.
I feel like your plan is to just say it so many times that people will get it.
Okay. Getting into the actual topic proper. Release info. Game came out in North America March 16th, 1999, came out in Europe April 28th, 2000, and was ported to the Mac in North America June 24th of 2003, which is real late.
Yeah.
And the Mac client also has its own emulator, the Al-Kabor project, which is what Project Quarm is based off of. It's a very weird... I'm just going to keep talking. As far as first encounters, the first time I ever heard about EQ was an early aughts teenage comedy movie called The New Guy, starring DJ Qualls and Eliza Dushku, and in it, a few of the characters were obsessed with the game. And at some point, like long post World of Warcraft, I tried to figure the game out, and I was playing the then current retail version, and just found it totally indecipherable and just kind of quit because it seemed like an absolute fucking mess.
Weren't we talking about that movie like the other week?
I think we were. I think I brought it up because I was like, yeah, that's how I heard about EverQuest, was The New Guy. No, you brought it up because in the movie, tangent. In the movie The New Guy, DJ Qualls plays this like nerdy guy at his school, and he has like an erection, and the lunch lady grabs it, and like this is the embarrassing moment that forces him to move schools. And the whole gist of the movie is that at the new school, he's going to be a cool guy. He's not going to be that dorky old guy. But the reason he had to move schools is because after the lunch lady grabbed his dick, she like twisted it and it broke. And so everyone called him Broke Dick. So we were talking, you brought up the broke dick thing, and we were joking about that.
Oh, it's because Andrew was punching people in the junk in the game we were playing.
Oh, yeah. And you're like, we'll call him Broke Dick, like in The New Guy. Now, I want to be clear. I've not watched this movie since it came out in like 2003 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not vouch for how well it holds up for anyone that pursues it because of what we've said here.
Oh, yeah. I imagine it does not hold up well at all.
I do remember enjoying it at the time, but I was also like 12. So, you know.
Yeah, no, I was in college and enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah. What about you as far as first encounters with EverQuest?
We kind of talked about it last week a little bit, but I played it in college because I worked for Speed Zone, and my boss was like, I play this game, you should play it too. He was super nerdy. Mm-hmm. And I tried, and it was an experience.
It is an experience. You would have been we established last episode, you would have been in the Planes of Power era, which is a very, very divisive era of the game. Let's talk development. So this game was originally conceived by John Smedley in 1996. The actual design and development was done by Brad McQuaid, who not very long ago passed away, unfortunately. Steve Clover and Bill Trost. Smedley had already worked in the games industry and was the head of Sony Interactive Studios, originally known as Sony Interactive Studios America, when he was put in charge. It did undergo a few name changes over the years before finally morphing and kind of splitting off from Sony into the Daybreak Game Company, which is what it's known as today, which is the company that currently still runs EverQuest, EverQuest 2, PlanetSide 2, I think DC Universe Online.
Don't they do Magic Online too?
They do Magic Online. Yeah, that as well. Not Arena, but specifically MTGO.
Yeah.
Smedley was very into tabletop RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and he went to his boss in 95 with the pitch before getting completely shut down. And this was late 95, and that boss quit the company like right after he pitched it. So he immediately went and repitched it to his new boss, Kelly Flock, and he said, do it, gave him the green light.
What kind of dirt do you think he had on his boss?
I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. So,
no, you can't play that game. All right, well, you're out of here.
Brad McQuaid and Steve Clover had put out a game called War Wizard that Smedley was aware of and impressed by, so he sought them out to work on this new project. Bill Trost and a few others also worked on the War Wizard team, and they were brought in, and it grew to about 10 members. All of them were kind of enamored with MUDs at the time. They were excited about the idea of this online game. And before long, that 10-person team grew into a 25-person team with different departments, and they were just kind of off to the races developing the game. Sony Interactive licensed the engine from a game called Tanarus and slapped on some network code and then basically built the rest from scratch. McQuaid and Clover were the primary designers, and they eventually ended up with an 80-page design Bible that would be worked into the game. And what's really interesting is it was relatively complete. Like, most of the content in that document made it into the final game. McQuaid would later comment that they really got to make the game that they wanted to make, which I think is important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Bill Trost was largely in charge of the art and history and kind of visual direction of the game, as well as the very robust and detailed faction system that the game has that we'll talk more about later. And then after making use of some of the kind of then burgeoning 3D improvements at the time, the game was worked into a playable enough state to be shown at E3 and GDC. The Kinos area of the game was shown at E3, and it was received well, but at GDC, the response was so positive that they struggled with players refusing to give up their seats. Like, they were literally trying to chase people. They go up to people and be like, hey, your time's up. This is the next person's. And they would be like, no, I will not stop playing Everquest. And then they caught people that would leave the seat and go to other seats. They would log that character out, go to a different seat, log in, and keep fucking playing. Like, this is how addictive the game was out of the gate, where they're chasing people around a fucking GDC booth. At launch, the game gained over 10,000 subscribers on the first day and enjoyed very high sales. Within 6 months, it had 225,000 units sold and over 150,000 players, which at the time is enormous.
Yeah.
This is before MMOs pulled in millions of people. That's gigantic numbers. And being an MMO, development just never stopped. And in the early days, it was a struggle to secure adequate bandwidth to keep the game up and running, because when they estimated their server space, the only metrics they had to go off of was like web browsing data, right? Mm-hmm. So they were like, hey, how much server space would we need for this much web browsing? And they bought servers based on that. Come to find out, EverQuest uses way more data and is much more time and packet sensitive. And so in the first 3 months, they had people in the data center at all times, literally 24/7 around the clock, people sitting in the data center having to baby these servers before they were able to really fix all of their bandwidth issues, because it was so unprecedented. They just were not properly prepared for it. The history doesn't stop and continues to today, because the game is still made. Daybreak still runs it. It is the game has never really changed hands. The company owning it has just slowly kind of morphed over the years. And it's interesting to hear a lot of the people on the current retail EverQuest team talk about the game, because a lot of them have been there since either the beginning or near the beginning. But they're bringing in new people because the game is 25 years old in 2024. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to like one of the higher ups talk on a podcast, and she was talking about like, it's really weird having people working on the game that weren't alive when it came out. And there are a lot of lessons that we've learned over the years running this game for a quarter of a century that I don't want to call them kids, but these young people don't know. And it's lessons that we have to say, no, this doesn't work that way. And they're like, well, it should. And they're like, yeah, we know it should, but we learned that in 2003 or what, whatever. and
you want to
just
fix the code? Good luck.
It's just fucking fascinating. Like, just it's like I don't know what the longest developed game is. I don't know if there's a world record for like game with the longest development, but I mean, this has to be up there, right? Like 25 years of active development. Now, granted, it's a shadow of its former self. It's very much free to play. There's microtransactions, and it is what it is. But it is still getting new content. There's still new stuff being made for it. Like, that's insane. Just the amount of shit in the game. And so this is where I put in a big hard break.
Oh, okay.
And I say now we're going to talk about the closest to what EverQuest was when it launched that I could play, which is not retail EverQuest, because retail EverQuest is an accumulation of those 25 years of development, and I wanted the classic experience. I played Project 1999.
Uh-huh. And that's the year it came out?
That is the year it came out.
Okay.
So the P99 server is meant to be as close to classic original EverQuest as is reasonable. They they don't have like the launch UI, because the launch UI is like ridiculous. Things like scrolling your mouse in and out, zooms in and out of your character. There's little bits in here, very minor conveniences added. But they're very, very, the P99 team is extremely concerned with like, how authentic, how classic is this, is the phrase they use. They're like, well, that is classic and that isn't classic. They're very zeroed in on what is and isn't classic, right? And I think the server's been running since at least 2011. So even this fan server of original EverQuest is older than most MMOs ever made it to officially. Right? Because that's 13 years ago, and I think it started before that, which is fucking insane. This is insane stuff.
I mean, if there's the audience for it, right? Like, I know I keep saying that, but
and the servers, P99 has 3 servers. There's the blue server, which is the original, the green server, which launched like 3 years ago, and the red server, which is the PvP server. The blue and green servers usually clock between like 300 and 1,000 players, depending on when you're logging in, which is pretty good for a fan server, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
The red server clocks, sometimes it hits triple digits. Okay, so just, it's not nearly as popular. It's kind of dead. But we're talking anywhere between like 600 to upwards of, 1,800 people playing this fan server at any given time, depending on the time of day, which is a lot of people for a server that's been around for a long time. So, presentation. EverQuest, as I mentioned, did go through quite a graphical overhaul in the retail version to make it a little more palatable, but the classic version, I honestly find very charming. The entire game, the aesthetic of the game is very classic fantasy. It's very classic Tolkien-esque fantasy. There's elves and dwarves and halflings, and a lot of the big raid bosses are like dragons and giants and trolls and stuff.
Oh my!
But I'm a pretty big fan of like vanilla fantasy to begin with. I'm a noted enjoyer of vanilla Tolkien-esque fantasy, and I know that like it's not, you
like, certainly don't spend time crafting fantasy worlds in various tabletop systems. That's not a thing you do.
Yeah, so let's say this. You have played in my D&D campaigns. I forget, Saturn's not here. You have played in my D&D campaigns quite extensively at this point.
Yeah.
And while I do like a weird escapade here and there, I think you know that I'm very much a traditional fantasy fan.
With a wizard who talks like this and is clearly evil.
I'm happy enough with dwarves that live under a mountain, elves that live in a forest, and halflings that are going to steal all your shit when you're not looking. Like, I'm happy with that version of fantasy. And again, I know it's not the trendiest version, but I like it. Dungeons are flagstone corridors with torches, and they're kind of wet, and there's kobolds in them. Like I'm okay with that. I like that. And as a big vanilla fantasy fan, I really like the presentation and aesthetic of EverQuest, because I find that very Tolkien-esque fantasy to be really timeless, right? There are other versions of fantasy that I find a little less timeless, and they end up feeling a little dated as they get older. But I really do like what classic EverQuest has, to the point that when I went to retail EverQuest to play and compare, I was taken aback because the graphical overhaul looks very not classic fantasy. They made everything look kind of weird. Like my dwarf, because I play a dwarf in Project 1999. I'm a dwarven cleric.
Mm-hmm.
My dwarf has like a big beard, and he's kind of bald on top, and he's got a scar over his eye. He's a very dwarfy looking dwarf. He's chonky, stocky, short dwarf, right?
Makes sense.
And I made the same thing. I made the same thing in retail EverQuest, and my dwarf was very like slender and athletic looking. His beard was cropped very close to his face. And he didn't look as rugged, And the thing is, in the classic EverQuest, dwarves have a special jump animation, and it is one of their class features. It has no functional use in the game. Like, functionally, it has no gameplay purpose. But one of the perks of playing a dwarf is that when you jump, you do this kind of like tumble, like you roll.
Okay.
And it's very dwarfy. Because you're short, very low to the ground, very kind of rotund. So you do this sort of jumpy roll thing instead of a regular straight up jump because you're short. And in the graphical, the graphical overhaul, the retail version of EverQuest, they changed it so it's like a ninja flip into the air.
Oh, that seems like
yeah.
an
And so
thing.
I was playing one night, and I was teamed up with another dwarf, and some high level character came by and was like helping us out with stuff, and we're like, okay, cool, thanks. And he's like, you guys are so cool, do the jump. And we had to like do the tumble for him for his enjoyment, so he would give us buffs. And he's like, that's awesome, see you later. Like that was like that's what he wanted. So I was really sad that it like turned into this very weird, way too high, like straight up ninja somersault jump in the overhaul. I love the soundtrack in this game. It is legitimately good fantasy music. And the actual sound font is pretty simplistic. Like, I think it's MIDI music.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said on the show before, I have very dumb ears. And the sound font makes it simple enough that the music is more accessible to me, if that makes sense. And so I legitimately find myself like humming some of the tunes, like the theme for Khaladim, the Dwarven city, as I'm like doing dishes and just kind of around my house.
It's just
I wish. Let's talk gameplay.
Okay.
Again, specifically about P99.
So
not
retail
EverQuest. Nah, God damn it, don't do it. Gameplay wise, I think it's best to describe classic EQ by what it's not.
Okay.
Because I think most of us are probably pretty aware of like basic fantasy MMO structure by now. You like grind progressively more difficult monsters, complete quests, do dungeons, eventually transition to end game raids, and get your epic gear. Like that's fantasy MMO shit, right?
Yeah.
And that's present in this game. It's present in a different way, but that's all here. Classic EQ still has all this. It's just kind of a different version. So the way I want to talk about this is I'm going to give you kind of the basics. So we know fantasy MMO, it's your standard stuff. So I'm going to go over some basic details, and then I'm just going to have a big list of like hardcore MMO shit that Project 1999 does.
All right. I'm
so
here for
first
it.
up, classes. You got your four class categories. You have your casters, which include enchanter, magician, necromancer, wizard. You have your priests, your healers, which are cleric, druid, and shaman. Your melee classes are bard, monk, ranger, rogue. And your tanks Your big tanky dudes are Paladin, Shadow Knight, and Warrior. The game does adhere to kind of the standard tank healer DPS triangle for parties, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's really loose with it. All of the classes are so different ability-wise that, like, I was playing in a group the other day that there was 6 of us. It was 5 priests and 1 tank. And it got weird, but it was doable, right? The game doesn't enforce it, you know. As long as you're smart and you play smart, you can get by with it. I sometimes you'll get into a party and you'll be like, all right, we're kind of a weird makeup. We're like, you know, 2 clerics and 3 enchanters. Like, what do we do? And you start to learn the good combos. Like, enchanter combos really good with cleric, and I play a cleric, so I know when I see an enchanter, like, hey, just me and that enchanter can go a long ways.
Okay.
Longer than like me and another cleric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Levels go from 1 to 60, and then it's full stop. You're just done. There are quests for epic gear, and there are trade skills if you so choose. You can take up like brewing or blacksmithing or whatever. It's not quite as robust as kind of modern trade skill systems, but they do exist, right? They're in the game. I had to take up cooking for a story I told on the show a couple of episodes ago, where I had to make a rat sandwich for a guy to fucking complete my quest. So that's all pretty basic fantasy MMO stuff. And a lot of games have cribbed this kind of stuff, the 1 to 60 levels, the tank healer DPS thing, that, you know, right? This is all very familiar.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go over what makes it unfamiliar. So this is just some hard old school MMO stuff to be aware of. And this list is either going to make whoever's listening to it go, oh, I'm never going to play this game, or go, oh, this sounds really interesting to me, right? These are the wrinkles. First up, you lose XP when you die, and you can de-level from it.
Yeah, that sounds awful. Didn't Final Fantasy 11 do that?
Final Fantasy 11 also did that. Yes, it did.
No, thank you.
Yeah. When you disconnect abruptly, your character stays logged in for 1 minute. So if you're trying to like unplug to get out of combat, ain't gonna happen. You're just gonna log in dead. Nothing is instanced. Nothing anywhere. And this means you are always in the same pool with the same people, and you can and will build a reputation in your server. And you should work to make it a good one. If you're an asshole to people are going to be like, oh, yeah, I recognize that fucking guy. That guy was an asshole to me 3 months ago, because there's no instances. You can't escape these people. There's no cross-server play, nothing. It's the same people the whole time. There is no dungeon finder, party finder, raid finder, none of that. There is no game-wide chat except for private messages. So finding a party means using the /who command and being social, talking to people, private messaging them. Hey, I see you're in the same area as me and the same level. Would you like to come party up with me? Etc., etc., etc. Are you totally turned off yet?
Yeah, no.
Travel is slow as molasses. There are no mounts. Boats take forever. I think a round trip on a boat ride to get to a different continent is half an hour in real life.
Good God. Okay.
There are a couple classes that can teleport you, but they expect a tip. Getting places just in general takes effort and time. It's a thing. It feels like you are going on an actual adventure. There's no auction house. There's no market board. If you want to sell something, you stand in the East Commons tunnel and you shout about it. You scream, WTS, this, and this. Here's my price.
Want to shit.
Yeah, want to shit. Anyone can loot anything on the ground.
Including other people, right?
Not other people, no. You cannot loot other people's corpses.
Oh, okay.
At all. Which is nice. In PvP servers, I believe you can, but I've never played PvP in Classic Everquest. Kill stealing is possible. If you start attacking a thing and I attack it and I deal more damage than you, that's my kill. I take the experience from you. When you die, your loot and your equipment stays on your corpse. You must recover it, or it's just there and you don't have it. So corpse runs are a thing. And this is my final thing. You cannot see monster HP, party MP, buff timers, yours or others, and a litany of other standard information that we've come to expect to be able to see at all times. When someone's buff runs out, they have to message you and ask for a refresh on that buff. When their MP is low, they have to tell you. They have to be like, "Hey, I'm out of MP. I gotta meditate," or other people won't know. It is just a slow game. It is a tough game. Progress is slow and methodical, and the game will absolutely have no issues with smacking you down if you get too fast or ambitious.
You're not really selling this game, man.
So let me talk about the play nice policy. Because all of this stuff, theoretically, in my head, would make for the most toxic, hateful, garbage-filled place full of assholes fucking each other nonstop, right? That when we think about what a game with these restrictions would feel like in the modern era, this just sounds like a recipe for a toxic shit fest, right?
Yeah.
But the game has play nice policies. And what this means is you cannot be an asshole to people in the game. And this is, in my eyes, what sets the EQ experience apart from modern MMOs and why I find it so engaging. If you are caught kill stealing, if you're caught training, which means dragging a train of monsters onto someone else to escape them, if you're caught just being rude to people or harassing people or following them or looting somebody else's corpse from a creature that they killed, you can and will get banned for it. Because the game is compared to modern MMOs, very heavily GM'd. There are GMs in the game. You can petition them. They will come in and they will redistribute gear. They will administer temporary or permanent bans. So the game creates this structure of ultimate freedom, right? You can loot anything. You can kill anything. Let me tell you about my first death in the game. I spawned into the game in front of this dwarven dude, and I immediately tried to strafe left to get a better look at him.
Yeah.
With the Q button.
Oh.
Q in classic EverQuest is bound to auto attack. So I immediately punched him in the face. And he fucking killed me. I died. That was my first death 3 seconds into the game. You know, and other examples, you can target anyone with any spells. I can target enemies with my healing spells. I can target friends with my damaging spells. Well, I mean, not friends, NPCs, because there's no PvP. I play in a non-PvP server. I can target the shopkeeper with my smite spell or whatever. And so the game provides this extremely open, flexible framework, and then enforces being nice to each other. Like, if you're just in the game calling people names or whatever, they'll come, get onto you for it. It's a thing. And there's something so intangibly exciting about it. Because for the most part, in, modern MMOs and stuff, if you're just kind of being annoying, but you're doing shit that the game allows, for the most part, nothing happens to you, right?
Yeah.
And the argument is usually, the argument you see made outside of classic MMOs is, well, the game lets me. If the game lets me do it, I should be able to do it. And this is kind of the opposite way to handle that, right? The modern way to handle that is, all right, let's design around these shitty things people are doing. This game just says, hey, just don't do that. We're not going to keep you from doing it. You can go steal everyone's kill. We're not going to stop you from doing it. We're going to ask you not to. And what it creates is, and it's something we see in tabletop role-playing games, it creates a social contract. We aren't just people sitting behind our computers playing a game together. We are people engaged in a social contract, the terms of which we've all agreed to, and we all understand that one another are going to abide by. And that social contract creates some amount of social responsibility to one another in the game world that is lacking a lot of the time, in my experience, in modern MMOs. because modern games don't really like, if the game lets you do it, they'll let you fucking do it. They're like, well, yeah, I mean, the game lets him, so it's not his fault for being an asshole. P99 is like, no, yeah, it is. You were being an asshole,
right? Like spawn camping level like 2 when you're like 50.
I love that you brought up camping because I want to talk about the gameplay loop.
Okay.
So, general gameplay loop of the game is log into the game. You first, when you get in, you already know where you're going to go, what you're doing, because you have a camp somewhere. You've camped out somewhere. You check your friends list, your guild roster, your whatever for people to party with. Check the zone you're camping in for people to party with. See if there's already a party there that you can join. You start sending some messages. Like every time I log in, I send a couple tells. I have a couple chats. Usually I receive a couple messages from people, and I end up in a party somewhere. And you just kind of gain XP in the zone you're parked in. And then when you get full up on loot, you go bank and sell stuff, and then you go repeat. And when you reach too high of a level for that to be meaningful, you move on to the next camp. And camps are broken down. They're understood in a social way within the game. Nothing is identified. So, for example, I just got done spending a lot of levels in a little dungeon area called Unrest.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, nothing is instanced. So dungeons aren't run. People don't run end to end through a dungeon. We started at the beginning and we're going to do all the content through to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's other people there and you're just going to run into each other and fuck up each other's stuff that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
You're going to end up training monsters onto one another. It's going to be a disaster. So what happens is, socially, players break the zone down. So in Unrest, when you show up and you're like, hey, LFG, there's an LFG flag too, just like in Final Fantasy 11. You type LFG on and it puts it next to your name. So when people see you, they're like, hey, that cleric is looking for a party. And you show up and you're like, hey, I'm new to the zone. Where do I go? And they go, yard. All right. So the yard is the yard because Unrest is like this old haunted mansion.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the yard in front of the mansion where all the lowest level monsters are. So that's your camp. You go there. You either make a party or join a party. If there is a party there already camping and they're full, you respect them and you do not take their monsters from the yard. You let them. It's their camp, and they've laid claim to it. And then eventually you work up to main room. It's the big room in the middle of Unrest. The thing about main room is that straight above it on the second story is the next level up camp, which is fireplace. Called so because there's a little fireplace up there.
Okay, yeah.
And whenever you, as a party, take on too many monsters, you run back to the zone line to load to the next zone so that they drop off. And when you do that, they run back to where they came from, the monsters do. So you basically run this big choo-choo train of monsters all the way to the entrance to the zone to escape without dying.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a train. The thing about main room is that the trains from Fireplace must pass through the main room because it's where the stairs lead down out of the mansion. So now you have all these camps that are all talking to each other. Fireplace would be like, hey, main room, train incoming, watch out. Then main room will know to watch out or also run if there's too many monsters spawned around them and they don't have anywhere to hide. And you are collectively multiple separate groups working in social collaboration with one another to exist cooperatively within this zone. And it is a social structure that is fascinating to see. When people don't follow the social contract, like I was playing in Fireplace one day, and a monster clipped through the ground. An upstairs monster clipped through the ground and landed in the main room. And main room was upset with us. And they're like, hey, FP, what the fuck, man? Who trained this? It was like a hag or something. Who trained this hag onto us? What are you guys doing? Nobody said anything, right? And then Fireplace had to apologize. Like, hey, sorry, that thing clipped through the floor. Sorry that happened to y'all. And then they're like, oh, well, we didn't know that. It's all good, right? And these are interactions that just don't exist in modern games because modern games aren't janky and weird, so they don't have to worry about this shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's this social nature that makes that big list of shitty, hardcore, old school MMO stuff palatable, right? Because traveling anywhere is dangerous, people help each other travel. One time, I just needed to go. I paid for a teleport to a new zone. And it ended up being a bust. Nobody was there. I was having a hard time leveling. And I was like, man, I spent all my money getting here
Mm-hmm.
because, there's this is a good time to talk about guilds. Because nothing is instanced, guilds in the game have a huge metagame around them, controlling various camps and claiming camps. And the server admins rotate claims to camps and raid bosses and stuff through the guilds. And the guilds all, much like our different parties work together in the Unrest camp, the guilds all work similarly with each other about raids, right? Because they're all wanting to do these big, giant endgame raids, but nothing's instanced. If you kill that dragon, we can't kill that dragon, and it's not going to spawn for 3 more days. So who gets to kill the dragon? So that social contract scales up. But there are also guilds in the game that are functional. There's a guild called Dial-a-Port. And all it is it's people who you call them up, like Uber, and say, hey, I need a port from this place to this place. And they go, all right, I'll be there in a minute. And they show up in the zone, and they say a little shout, and they're like, ding dong, your port is arrived from this place to this place. Meet me here. And you traditionally tip them, and the tip is scalable. They usually expect to receive 1 platinum piece per level of the character ported. So I'm like a level 15 character. I tipped him 15 platinum. They ported me to this new zone, and they were very nice, and they took the time to run me around the zone and show me where everything is, because I was like, I'm new to the game. I've never been here. And they're like, cool, I'll show you where stuff is. Town is that way. Watch out for over here. There's giants. This is how you get here. This is how you get here. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to get back, but I couldn't afford a port back. And I was not in a big enough guild at the time to get ports for free. And so I'm just kind of chatting, and I end up connecting with another guy that's like, yeah, I'm kind of going back too. It was a bust, and I have to figure out how to run to town to meet up with him to catch the boat back. And we had neither one of us had ridden on the boat before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're enjoying this boat ride, which one way is 15 minutes. And it's just a fun adventure. Like it's, I gained no experience. Nothing cool happened. If anything, it was a negative experience. I lost a bunch of money, but it was dangerous enough, and people understand that it's dangerous enough that they help you. They'll show you around. If you're talking, like I was talking in, I guess the zone chat or something, it was like, yeah, how do I get back to Coladeem? Like, this is a bust here, and they're like, well, you got to take the boat. I don't know where the boat is. Let me show you where the boat is. Come take the boat ride with me. And it's just really cool, right? The downside is that it takes a long time. Like you can't log in and play for 5 minutes, right? Logging in and getting in a party is an effort. It's a social effort. I have to sit down and like send messages. Hey, where are you at? All right, cool. I'll run over there. Let's meet up in this place and run through this zone together because it's extra dangerous. And then we can set up camp here and then blah, 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 blah. And then you get there and you want to have your actual party, right? You don't want to just log off. And so it's time consuming. It's a time consuming game.
It sounds like it. But like also I get where you're having fun with it too. Like
right.
I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, that sounds good for you, I guess. But like, I understand that it scratches an itch for you, and it's like you said, you're going on an adventure and you're getting these like emergent gameplay moments that you wouldn't get somewhere else,
right? If
you were able to teleport more freely or whatnot.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's I mean, obviously, would I prefer a game that was completely accessible and respectful of my time and easy that also had these same social elements? Sure. I don't know how you would make that. I would love that. The reason it exists here is because there's this social contract and mutual respect for one another's journey, because that's a tough journey because you had to take it too. That people are oddly kind about it, and so like I don't know how you get that. I don't know how you get one without the other, right? This social environment seems to exist because of the nature of the game.
Yeah, well,
and I would go ahead.
I would think like analogous to real life, like not taking specific instances into account, but if your neighbor shows up and needs something, you're gonna help, right?
Right.
But if you see that same person needs help and it's a rando on Instagram asking for help or Facebook or whatever, you're like, well, it's their problem.
Yeah, you don't fucking care.
Yeah.
You're like, whatever, dude. So yeah, I didn't talk about factions. I wanted to mention factions, and I didn't know quite where to put them in. But I just find this a very mechanically interesting thing within the game that other MMOs don't quite seem to do like this.
Mm-hmm.
So every NPC, which means every monster and every townsperson, has a faction alignment. And everything you do for NPCs, such as killing dudes or doing quests or whatever, shifts your standing within the affiliated factions accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you play an evil character, you are treated as kill on sight in good towns. And good players are kill on sight in evil towns. But you can manipulate this faction system. So let's say you're an evil character and you want to go to the dwarf town, which happened to a friend that I was playing with. He was playing a Shadow Knight, which is an evil character. They're like an evil anti-paladin kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to go hang out in the dwarf town with me, but the dwarves hate him. He's a Shadow Knight. Dwarves hate Shadow Knights. These kill on sight. So he goes to a camp full of orcs that the dwarves hate and just starts killing them until the dwarves like him. Right? And this faction system applies to the entire game. You go kill this thing and these people will like you, and vice versa. You go do quests for the people in this town and they will like you more because of it. And it's really cool and really nuanced. And like I've seen other games do factions, right? Where they're like, oh yeah, you've improved your standing with this faction, but really all it is like these people like you more so you can get some special rewards.
Yeah. Well, like WoW had that one area in Classic, I say in Classic, in Vanilla, I guess, where you were neutral to all the enemies until you started doing a quest line for one faction, and then all of a sudden you were friendly and hated.
Yeah, so it's like that, but the whole game is that. And I love that. That adds such a cool amount of nuance to the game. And it applies into how you play too, because I didn't mention this in my big list of hardcore MMO shit, but you don't know what level any monster is.
Oh, that's fun.
You have no way to know, so you have to hit the consider button. So when you walk up to a monster, you target it and push consider, and it will consider them, and it will tell you how they feel about you and how likely you are to win that battle. And it's color coded. So you're like, oh, that enemy's green, I can probably take them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're red, they're going to kick the shit out of you. So don't be careful. What I like about that is it means that I'm not just running through seas of enemies unless I know the zone really well. It makes me take a more methodical path.
Yeah.
But also I see the faction standing of everyone. And so you're constantly checking faction standing with everyone, monsters and everything alike. And it's just really cool, right? It's a different kind of immersion that makes the world feel more connected, I guess, and kind of more alive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's neat, I like it.
Good. I'm glad for you.
I could talk for because I've probably played 60, 70 hours of the game. I'm only level 27. It's slow. It's getting real slow. And I like that you brought up emergent gameplay because so much of this game is stories.
Mm-hmm.
Emergent stuff happens all the time. Like I was playing when I started the game, there was a wood elf near me who was like also level 2 or whatever, and we partied up. And he was coming back to the game. He hadn't played since he was a kid. And I was totally new. So we hung out, for a little while.
Yeah.
And whenever I'd log in, I'd message him if he was on because there's a little friends list and we'd chat. And we started the game off and then we quickly kind of drifted apart, right? As you do. And so we'd send a PM every once in a while. Hey, how's the level going? Blah, blah, blah. And then that was it. And one day I was running through a zone I'd been through 1,000 times. And he comes running in the exact opposite direction of me, shouting help.
Mm-hmm.
And I see behind him he's chased by this gargantuan spider that I've never seen. I don't know where the fuck this came from. And I'm like, holy shit. And so I save him from this spider. And he's like, oh my God, thank you so much. You can have this helmet I just found. Right?
Yeah.
And it was just a cool emergent moment. Another time I was running through that same strip. I had made this run a million billion times because I didn't have a way to teleport back to my binding point yet. Not every class gets it, but clerics get it at like level 5 or 9 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been through here, I don't know, a couple dozen times, and I'm kind of not paying attention at this point, and I'm just sort of walking through the safe newbie zone, and out of nowhere, a named orc, not an orc, an ogre, a named ogre comes charging out of the woods at me and almost kills me. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? I've been here 1,000 times, and it just turns out that randomly in this section of the world, this named ogre will occasionally spawn. That's it. Just no real reason for it. And I did eventually run him to the guards, and the guards saved me, right? Because there's little guard posts everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's just these moments, it is a game of stories and emergent gameplay, and it is this very open structure that, again, will kind of let you do whatever you want, that allows for that, because of the openness, because there's no real right way to play, because the game is so kind of impossible to just tackle by yourself end to end, that you kind of by default have to create these moments, these instances, At some point I have to stop gushing about it, so I'm just going to talk about reception now.
Okay, that's fair.
Reviews at retail release were good. A lot of critics praised the technical achievement of the game as well as the immersive nature. Keep in mind, the other big MMO at the time was a completely 2D top-down game. It was Ultima Online. There were some complaints about the repetitive nature, which is fair. It is a very repetitive game. It was awarded GameSpot's Game of the Year in 1999. Project1999 in particular seems to be the gold standard for the EQ emulator fan servers popping up, and definitely receives plenty of praise in its own right. Retail Everquest was also kind of a heavy early discussion in the world of video game addiction. The game has gained the nickname Evercrack within many communities. There are some negative connotations with the game. There was at least one very public suicide that was kind of tied to the game, although, as is often the case in these instances, really the problem was apparently severe mental health issues. So there was some notoriety that the game had, let's say that, in the early 2000s because of these situations. As retail EQ dragged on, the game kind of declined from the shining mountaintop it once inhabited, and player opinion has kind of also declined with it. The game is on official servers, they have to designate if you're allowed to multi-box, because multi-boxing is so popular in EverQuest, because again, you can't play it alone. So if you want to play it on your own time, you got to play your whole party, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of servers in the retail EverQuest world that allow you to multi-box, or sometimes it'll be like 2-box. You can run 2 characters. And in my time in retail EverQuest, which was confusing and weird because instead of pruning features and curating the experience over 25 years, they just keep layering on top of the game features for 25 years, and it makes it very confusing.
So it's like Windows source code.
It's kind of like that. It feels like, in Windows 10, how you have 2 control panels, and you're like, why are there 2 control panels? And they're like, well, we just never got rid of the old one. So, just 2 of them.
Yeah. When we merged the kernel like from that. NT and retail or whatever.
And Project 99, you are not allowed to do that. There is no botting. There's no multi-boxing. If you're caught doing that, you will get in trouble. If you want to have 2 people playing in the same house, you have to apply for a manual IP address exemption so that you don't get banned whenever you log in. They're very serious about it in the classic community. Retail over the years has very much embraced the idea that you are just sort of expected to multi-box.
At what point do you have to file a permit with the city?
I don't know. I'm waiting on it. When I was playing retail, I hopped in the retail servers, and I was like, or the Discord server, and was like, hey, am I going to be behind everyone if I multi-box? Like, because I was playing the game, and I was noticing whole parties of people running around together in unison, and I couldn't get anyone to talk to me or group with me. It was the opposite experience of Project 1999. and people were very standoffish. It was dead quiet all the time. And I finally got some people talking to me in Discord, and they were like, yeah, if you're not multi-boxing, you're going to have a bit of a hard time. You can still find parties and people still talk to you, but it's going to be an effort. You're going to have to kind of fight for it a little bit. I even went so far as joining the one role-playing server, Furiona Vi, in retail EQ. Because in my head, I was like, well, role players are going to be, more invested in the experience and the story of the game than necessarily just getting the top content with a full party of characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get exactly one person to speak to me in that server. And they did do a bit of role playing with me, which was very fun. But I chatted for them for maybe an hour because they were teaching me Elvish. Because in the role playing server in retail, you don't know other languages. I knew Dwarvish, and the accepted common tongue was Elvish. So as they're teaching me Elvish, which is done by joining my party and pushing a macro that says a bunch of Elvish words repeatedly until I understand it, 13th Warrior style, they are talking to me in the PMs, and I'm like, well, I was hoping this would be kind of, a little more social. And they're like, yeah, it's not like that anymore. It was years ago. You missed it. You can still have a good time, but you're mostly going to have a good time by yourself. And so I guess now I'm kind of talking about legacy, but it's kind of sad that's what retail EQ has become. But it makes me more thankful that P99 exists. Also, in 2008, the game was banned from sale in Brazil along with Counter-Strike because it, quote, leads the player to total distortion and heavy psychological conflicts because the tasks that he receives can be good or bad.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which is a translated quote. No, don't. So the game in the early aughts, it was received well. It had a reputation. The idea of video game addiction, EverQuest addiction, the negative psychological effects of games that take thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of your life were very much a thing people were talking about. And maybe a thing they were talking more about then because of EverQuest. As far as legacy, EverQuest 2 released the same month as World of Warcraft, which we talked about last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the fact that you don't remember that happening says everything you need to know about EQ2.
Because it's still,
EverQuest,
do they still have like EverQuest 2 servers?
Yeah, it's up. It's officially run. It's run by Daybreak, and you can go play it, and it's a thing. The player count is lower than even retail EverQuest, and I suspect that the player count, this is a guess, to be clear, I suspect the player count of retail EverQuest is lower than the total player count of all of the emulated servers, fan servers. EverQuest Online Adventures released on PS2 because there was in development some discussion of, hey, PS2 is coming out, because it was 99, should we pivot and make a PlayStation 2 game instead of a PC game? And they stuck with PC, which I think time bore out was the correct decision, but they did go ahead and make a PS2 version of the game, which was pretty different, but still was an online MMO game. It ran from 2003 until being shut down in 2012. And there's some videos online of the servers being shut down, and it's just sad music over people spamming the chat with like, I love you guys. This game was my life. I'll miss all of you forever.
Jesus.
So if you ever want to cry at a video game, that's a good way to do it.
Nope.
A tabletop RPG, toy line, novels, tons of other related merchandise has released over the years. And of course, I've said it before, the game itself is still running. It's celebrating its 25th year, its 30th expansion. And while it is a shadow of its former glory, it still does have a dedicated community. And it's still alive. It's still going.
Sounds like it. I mean, it's neat to me that a rando person such as yourself can go and find their bit of entertainment in this thing that has been around for 25 years, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you really can't say that. Like, if you wanted to go back and play like Black and White or whatever, right? I don't know why I'm pulling Black and White out, but like, it's kind of a pain.
I think because Black and White is largely not available.
Yeah.
You can't buy it anymore.
Yeah, it's a pain to track it down or get it into a playable format. And that's not the case with an MMO, which is kind of surprising, really, as many MMOs that have come and gone over the years.
For sure. And I guess we're kind of getting the final thoughts here, but retail EQ is kind of a bit of a nightmare to play and navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just kind of accepted that people there multi-box, and cheating is also not accepted, but it's kind of one of those known unknowns, where it's like everybody knows that other people do it.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't leading.
However, Project 1999 has been an absolute blast. The enforced social nature and play nice policies mean that everyone really does work together to make it a better game. There is a little bit of guild drama at the high level in boss raid stuff. A lot of guilds get a little, snippy with each other from time to time. But I don't know that I'll ever put in the requisite number of years to even reach those levels. It's a really fun experience, even if the actual game seems to hate you. Which seems to be the game fucking hates you. It's gonna kill your ass with spiders and leave your shit on the ground, and you're gonna lose all your experience. It's gonna suck. But the people understand that the game hates you, so they hate you less.
I feel like that's a play on like jobs at like a big corporation, right? Like,
yeah,
the corporation doesn't care about you. They don't, they don't care. They'll replace you in a minute. But the people you work with, that's what makes the job worth it.
You know what's funny is I do see a correlation there, because the jobs I've had where people were the closest and nicest to each other were always the shittiest fucking jobs.
We have to be nice to each other.
There's something like, I don't want to call it shared trauma, because trauma is a real serious thing that people do deal with, and we need to treat more seriously as a society. But it does feel like this shared trauma experience,
Yeah.
Of like,
you do trauma bonding while you're like short-staffed.
We know what each other has fucking been through. So there's a built-in amount of respect and admiration for your trials and tribulations that I understand. It's nuts. That's EverQuest. That's everything. All of it. I did not touch on
for all times ever.
I did not touch on any of the lore, any of the class features, any of the spells, any of anything. It's massive. It's so big.
Yeah, it's weird that you talked for like 4 hours about EverQuest, basically, and like
said really nothing about actual EverQuest.
Right, it's all overview stuff.
Yeah, but again, it's your standard. Kill these goblins and get experience, and maybe they'll drop a dagger you can use. Like, it's
maybe they'll drop a dagger, maybe they'll drop a deuce.
I do love. We're at the end of the show, so we can go on tangents. The character models for the goblins in the game, their butt cracks hang out.
No.
And so when they fall down and die, they fall down in this posture. It's kind of this in yoga, it's called like child's pose.
Yeah.
You kind of curl up in a ball, but your butt's kind of up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So they fall down dead and they stick their ass up in the air and their cracks hanging out. And it's funny to me every fucking time. And currently I'm camped in a place called High Keep, killing goblins. And so it's just goblin ass cracks, a sea of goblin ass cracks. Although I was laughing the other day because I was playing with a troll, and trolls are very big creatures, and I'm a dwarf, so I'm very small.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a caster, I'm a cleric, so I sit in the back, and I just sit on the ground and meditate, and I'll stand up, cast a spell, and then sit back down. That's just sort of my gameplay loop, because I just heal. And there was a troll back there also healing, a shaman, and he was sitting directly in front of me, and I realized the troll character model also has its ass crack hanging out. And so I'm jammed in a corner, so I'm zoomed in first person mode, and all I see is troll back. And then every time he stands up to cast, I see troll ass crack, and then it goes back down. But I target with my function keys, so I don't need to see anything. So I was just staring at intermittent troll ass crack and healing for an hour.
Well, I mean, enjoy the sights while you can, I guess.
You can also enjoy our Patreon. At patreon.com/Retro Warriors, at least until someone comes out with a fan server for our Patreon that's more successful than our regular Patreon and is a more enjoyable experience. But until Guy does that, patreon.com/Retro Warriors for all of your Talking Wizards related needs. I know you have many of them, and we will fulfill your needs with Talking Wizards.
Would it be like a RW15 server or whatever?
Yeah. Retro Warriors as it was in 2015 when it was good before they ruined it.
They ruined it with people like Guy.
Yeah, the pre-Guy years. You can also get Relong. There's cool stuff there. Please go give us money like these wonderful people that we're going to thank, starting with Grady Haynes.
And Nick Brown.
Kazin the Mage.
David DeAndrea.
Dean W. McFarland.
Sean Racine.
Mike Zapix. Tall RN.
Element O Geek. Jorge Valdez.
We're doing so awesome. This one got butchered being copied and pasted, but I think it's Emil Rune Maller.
Oh, okay. Well, I get Brandon Johnson.
Are all the fine patrons that we accurately thanked with correct pronunciations for their kind donations to our Patreon, where they give us dollars and cents, and we spend them on Digimon. Guy does too. He just doesn't tell anyone. It's a secret.
No, it's their communal Digimon.
We just have one that we share.
Yeah,
it's like a class pet. Every time we have a Retro Warriors meetup, it gets passed to another person that has to keep it alive.
Right, and we keep blinking it out, right? So like the Patreon money every month goes to like an extra little diamond, and depending on how much Patreon money we get, determines the carat of the diamond that we put on.
I know that it's a joke, but I would be so into a blinged out communal Digimon that we all shared. That would be so fun. I'd be very into this idea.
Oh my God.
Anyway, that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always,
let us cling together.